Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Welcome to the Think Factory's Workplace Podcast, powered by OGC Solutions, the podcast where we explore the ever-evolving landscape of workplace dynamics. My name is Elka Bahal. I'm a partner with Outside General Counsel Solutions and the chair of our Corporate Immigration Services Group, and I am your host today. In the modern interconnected world, the ability to navigate cultural differences, relocation challenges, and diverse workforce needs has never been more crucial. Join us as we dive into insightful conversations with industry experts, thought leaders, and those who have made the leap across borders. Together, we'll uncover strategies for fostering inclusive workplaces, enhancing employee experience, and driving organizational success in a globalized economy. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your journey in global mobility, there is something here for you. I'm delighted to have with me today Devika Bhagwandas, the Regional Global Mobility Manager for the Americas at H&M. Devika, welcome to the podcast. I am thrilled to have you here as our very first guest. It's a very special moment for us. I can't wait to hear your insights and experiences. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your role at H&M?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alka, for having me as your very first guest on this podcast. I'm totally appreciate it. So my name is Devika Bhagwandas. I was born in South America of Indian descent. I was actually born in the only English-speaking country in South America, which is British Guyana. And I was raised in the neighboring country of Suriname, which is Dutch Guyana. So that's how I speak Dutch as well. I immigrated to the United States about 30 years ago. And my very first professional legal job that I had was as a litigation paralegal working for one of the largest prominent litigation law firms in New Jersey by the name of Gibbons Del Deo. That firm had a very small immigration operation, and I always would express an interest to help out in the immigration department whenever I could. Those initial interests actually led to a full-fledged career in immigration. And so I started from the very bottom, working as an assistant immigration paralegal, then as a full-fledged immigration paralegal, senior paralegal, and have literally worked my way up the ladder in the past 25 years of my career. I started out initially working in law firms, which I'm extremely grateful for because that's where I obtained all of my legal background in immigration law, and then transitioned over to in-house roles. So I've worked for some amazing corporations, global corporations in the last 15 years in various in-house immigration roles. And so that's has been the trajectory of my career. And here I am now as the current Regional Global Mobility Manager for H&M.
That's really an amazing journey. So your credentials are actually a little bit different than the quote unquote typical global mobility manager, right? You have a special certification that not too many folks have, the Global Mobility Specialist certification. Am I right?
That is correct, Alka. I actually stumbled across an article many, many years ago about the Global Mobility Specialist certification, which was being offered by Worldwide ERC, known as Worldwide ERC at that time. And I thought it was very interesting, and I wanted to learn more about the other aspect of, all of the other aspects that fall under global mobility. So I signed up for this course, which I took over several months. And then it culminated in a 6-hour long test or so, if I remember correctly, or 3 to 6 hours. Took the test and passed it, and then received my GMS certification and PIN in the mail. And at that time, the GMS certification was known, but not as popular as it is today. So when I started listing GMS after my name on LinkedIn and in various communication and my resume, I would often get asked a lot of questions about what GMS was because not a lot of people had that certification at that time. So I started sharing information. I said, oh, you can go to this website and this is where this course is listed. Now, here we are in such an amazing global mobility space where almost everybody I know now has the GMS certification.
You were a pioneer in your time. So, how would you define global mobility in the context of your organization, and why is it so important?
So global mobility at H&M, for example, or any organization, it's extremely important. What we do, we are part of a very critical function within the organization. Most times, this function sits within total rewards or HR, but we're the team that really helps to move talent where talent needs to be. And so we're a vital, vital part of any organization. And many, many multinational corporations have a global mobility function now. At H&M, I can share it's a very visible role. Global mobility is extremely key to moving talent where talent needs to be. And so, as the regional global mobility manager, I oversee that process for the US, Canada, Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, and partner very closely with our team in Sweden. But at H&M, I can share that it's an extremely vital part of our HR department. And so what I do and what our team does is extremely critical to the success of the company.
So, you generally have people moving around almost on a constant basis, right? So, would you say that H&M, even in the Americas, is pulling from a global pool of talent?
Yes, we do. We do rely heavily on our global pool of talent. And so that's where our team, the Global Mobility team, comes into play, where we facilitate those relocations and the moves of our expats and other employees on various different types of assignments from EMEA, from LATAM, for example, to get them to other locations where their talent is needed.
So, global mobility is really key for you to maintain a talented, properly skilled, and equipped workforce, right?
It is. And that's why I often say that, in so many previous webinars and seminars and discussions and panels I've attended on global mobility, when we talk about, global mobility having a seat at the table, well, here at H&M, it's always had a seat at the table. And it's a very important seat at the table.
That's amazing. So, how do you make sure that the process of relocating, to the Americas is successful? How do you ensure the employees are satisfied in that process?
I think so. What I do is, part of our work, and of course, trying to maintain compliance with the various policies that we have, and that entails immigration compliance, tax compliance, and all the other components that fall under this process. One of the ways that I personally ensure there is success is I I communicate and on a personal level. I explain things very clearly on calls. I schedule calls, I have meetings because I feel that while we can communicate so much via portals and systems and emails, there's no better way to make an impact and get the message across of what processes entails and what risk may entail than having a one-on-one conversation with all of the internal stakeholders. And that includes our talent acquisition partners, our HR business partners, our hiring managers, and then ultimately the employee themselves who are relocating. And I've always found that this strategy is what ultimately leads to success because by explaining what the process entails, explaining and highlighting any risk that may or may not be involved, they're hearing it outright and they have a better understanding of what to expect. So I set the expectation from the very beginning of the process and walk them through it up until the end, up until they transfer, they arrive in where they need to arrive. So I've always found that strategy has worked well and has been extremely successful. So not just relying on, well, this is what you need to do, this is what the policy says, this is what the system, this is what you have to upload, but also literally getting on a one-on-one call with all the internal stakeholders and getting everybody aligned.
So for you, it's really the personal touch. It's you
It
using
is.
your knowledge, your experience with the process, and really individualizing your support of that person during their transition or transfer to the US or the
Exactly.
Americas generally. That's really cool. I mean, considering you're an organization of over 100,000 employees, to be providing that sort of personalized support within the context of global mobility, that is incredible. Nice.
It is. It is. And it goes a long way. It goes a long way. I can tell you that for example, when it comes to the way I strategize cases. I use empathy, for example, as a strategic tool because by having conversations with our internal leaders, I understand the pressures that leaders are feeling, the emotions that are driving employees. And so it helps to connect the dots. It's helped me to further explain what they need to expect in the process, and it just makes it for an overall better employee experience at the end of the day. So when sometimes you think of empathy, and sometimes employees may feel that, oh, our global mobility profession is not empathetic towards a situation, I use that as a strategic tool to say, yeah, I do understand what you're going through, and I know how difficult this process is, or I know how long it's going to take you to get your visa appointment. So by using that as a strategic tool, they know that I know what they're going through. It's not just a process, it's employees and emotions and families that are involved.
That's really impressive. So you're really understanding them. It's fair to say you have a very high emotional IQ or
I
EQ.
do.
So you mentioned earlier immigration. So how does immigration interact with global mobility? How important is that component?
Oh, Alka, immigration is extremely important. I always advise and counsel and guide and explain that nothing really can start without immigration, especially if it's for an international relocation. So the way I strategize this entire process is that before any offers are made to any candidates, internal candidates, please come to me with you know, key pieces of information that I request so that I can conduct an immigration assessment first before anything else is done in the global mobility process. Because at the end of the day, if someone's not qualified for a work visa or for any immigration sponsorship, we can't have that person relocate. And I've had cases in the past where, offers were made, for example, that had to be rescinded because no one reached out to check if immigration sponsorship was viable or not. So, immigration is extremely key, and especially when it comes to US immigration. We already know the kind of challenges we deal with here in the US,
Mhm.
but there's also immigration around the world. So, first
Mhm.
and foremost, I always advise our key internal stakeholders, let's assess the immigration piece first before we make any offers and before we go down the road of global mobility and relocation.
So in this context, this is where your immigration experience as a paralegal in the past is really beneficial in making that preliminary assessment. You know the fundamental requirements, and you can make that assessment, but you really have to get ahead of the issue in order to make it happen, right? Like you said, otherwise, if we're offering people who we know can't fit into the US or Canadian immigration system, we have a problem.
Exactly. So that's where all of my expertise and knowledge in the immigration space comes into play. Because, as I said, I started off in immigration, worked in many different law firms in the beginning phase of my career. And I was the person who was drafting the H-1B petitions, for example, the L-1
Mm.
petitions, putting together together those packages, corresponding with our employees, helping them with their interview appointments abroad, coaching them for their interview appointments before they attend the interview. So all of that knowledge and expertise is extremely vital and comes into play, in my current role as the regional global mobility manager.
Incredible, incredible. So tell me, what cultural adaptation or support do you provide? So you have people coming from all over the world, right? And they're moving into this really Western culture. Do you find that there's support needed there? Are there things that you have built into your global mobility procedures that help people in that regard?
Yes, we do. We do have support that we provide to our employees or expat population for cultural assimilation. I can even go so far and tell you that sometimes I myself will take off my global mobility and immigration hat and provide more on a personal level assistance when it comes to cultural adaptation, provide some guidance, say, hey, you can do this, or, this is where you can go, for example, based on my personal experiences. Because in the beginning, I was also an immigrant, right? I didn't know any of this stuff. So coming from that direction, I'm always in that position where I know and I've gone through this phase and I can provide guidance. But yes, we work with amazing vendors who provide assistance and support to all of our employees when it comes to helping them to assimilate culturally and settling in wherever, their roles are taking them in the host country. We do provide that level of assistance.
So you're really able to draw on your personal experiences having gone through that process. You get to draw on your experiences as an immigration paralegal helping other people, probably volumes of people, through that process. And now you get this really top level view and all the different components that are involved in the transition from the immigration to the cultural to the practical, finding
Yep.
the housing, finding a vehicle, finding a school.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I
amazing.
I can even share that I often joke when it comes to relocation and choosing a place to live. Sometimes I'll even provide guidance and I'll say, hey, have you checked out Jersey City? I live there. I can help you if you need it.
Nice.
So,
Practical
so it's
assistance.
like,
That's
yeah,
what
she's
people
not only
need,
the global
right?
mobility and immigration manager, she's helping us to
It's
look
a real
into
estate
real
agent.
estate as well because she knows the area.
So we're talking about workplace culture. Diversity is really important at H&M. According to your 2023 annual sustainability report, which came out recently, you have an average of 101,000 employees, and 74% of them are women, with 64% of leadership positions as women. These are impressive statistics. How does H&M do it? How do you see that from the inside? How does that affect you and your workplace?
So this is a really great question. I'm so glad you're asking it. H&M is, I'm just proud to be part of this organization. What they do in the I&D or D&I space is phenomenal. And it's a company that walks the talk. We They foster collaboration. We have 7 CRGs or ERGs, employee resource groups. I'm happy to share that I am the co-chair of one of 3 co-chairs of APIC, or Asian Pacific Islander ERG group. And the work we do, and this is coming from a top level, it's an extremely diverse company. Every day I get to witness that all of our employees bring their authentic selves to work at H&M. And we celebrate it. We celebrate our diversity, our authenticity, and the work we do speaks for itself. We just recently had our IND State of the Union annual session, and the amount of work that our team does and have put in the last year is just phenomenal. And this is something that is ongoing on a daily basis. This takes place every single day that we're in the, in the office or working remotely. That collaboration never stops. That fostering of diversity in everything we do never stops. It continues, and it comes from our top leaders too. Our senior executives are amazing, amazing champions. And supporters of diversity of this organization. So it's an extremely exciting company and culture to be a part of.
Very impressive. It's really quite the shining example with those statistics and that personal experience you're having. This is sort of the ideal. Everybody wants to be in that diverse and inclusive workplace. And I imagine having this, international movement of personnel contributes to a very multicultural environment where you get exposure to different cultures and different ways of thinking.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. We have an extremely amazing multicultural environment. We get to celebrate through our employee resource groups many functions within that fosters diversity, and it brings all of us together. For example, right now I'm planning with my other co-chairs. We're planning a Diwali celebration at the end of October.
How
So
exciting.
yes, so things like that, and I get to be a part of that. But also from a global mobility perspective, I always say that global mobility has always had a foot in the door when it comes to IND initiatives, because in the global mobility space, I get the opportunity to work with employees and colleagues from around the world, from diverse, from many different backgrounds, and so that in itself involves diversity. So to get
Mhm.
to partner with our teams separately and be a co-chair of one of our resource groups is a great addition to what I already do in the global mobility and immigration space.
Yeah, I can see that. That's really great. So, can you share with our listeners some best practices or any tips for employers who are looking to improve their workforce in some way or maybe enhance a global mobility program? Any recommendations you can throw out there?
Sure. I think first and foremost, we hear about technology a lot, and it's very important to be part of an organization or culture that embraces technology. Technology is the way forward, and more so now with all of the discussions we've been having about AI and how AI will help to revolutionize the global mobility field. But I think if you're not part of an organization, that embraces technology, then you're sort of going to get left behind. So my tips are, make those suggestions to improve global mobility processes, because they're needed. Technology is needed in what we do to help streamline our processes, to help build better programs for our employee, enhance employee experience at the end of the day. So many factors. We deal with so many factors within global mobility, cost estimates, for example, relocation. So having technology and having the right tools and technology in place is a big plus for any organization and to make global mobility successful. I've been I've had the opportunity to do just that here at H&M. So I'm working on some amazing projects currently that will further help to streamline and enhance our global mobility process.
Oh, that's exciting. So we'll have to have you back on the podcast after you've gone through those projects so you can tell me all about them.
Yes.
So on that point, so our closing question, what do you think are the key factors influencing workplace dynamics now and into the future?
Key factors in influencing workplace dynamics. I think having an open mind, having a mind to collaborate, to raise your hand and volunteer when you can, and just have a keen sense of yearning to learn. I always say that when I think I may know everything there is to know in global mobility, there's always something that comes up that I don't know. So having, being able to embrace change and be flexible but learn at the same time, it's exactly what I did in my career. When I saw this article about the GMS designation, I didn't know what it was, but I wanted to learn more about it, and that led me to take the course and get this designation. And similarly, with so many other areas within my career where I've always embraced change. Um, to go the next step further. So I think in global mobility, with so much changing so rapidly, we have to be able to embrace change while maintaining compliance, but really to embrace change and learn and implement what we learn into our own global mobility programs to make our program successful and ultimately our company successful.
Yeah, I have to say, one of the sort of commonalities I've seen in people successful, such as yourself, is a constant curiosity, a
Yes.
willingness to learn, an openness to develop more different skills, and just a general openness. And you clearly exhibit that. I think it seems to be one of the things that makes you so amazing at your job. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who would think that. I bet you've got a whole slew of employees and other managers that think that you are fantastic at what you do, since I know you are.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. So, and our final question. So, one of the questions we always ask at the end of our podcast is, what keeps you up at night? So, in our context, what keeps you up at night when you think about the future of the workplace, or global mobility, or globalization of our workplace?
So what keeps me up at night? I actually, when I log off at the end of the day, I actually will think about some cases and how I can develop a strategy, especially if it's a situation that's complicated. So when I log off, I'll think about it at night and I'll think about, okay, maybe if we go this route or we go that route, or maybe, oh, I just came up with this idea. I'll run it by our attorney tomorrow, or I'll run it by our team tomorrow. Or if it's an issue like a system issue, how can we make this better? What are some ways we can look into making this process better? So I'm always thinking about how to make processes better and ultimately how to enhance employee experience when it comes down to a personal situation or a case. For example, if I'm dealing with a personal matter with an employee, I think about how to phrase those conversations, how to be more mindful of what a particular situation is and how to approach it, and how to also get the employee to understand that I understand what they're going through. So those are some of the things that keep me up at night in, from a global mobility perspective. Just really how to overall improve not only my skills and my knowledge, but find ways of improving processes. And that's why I'm so happy to be part of the H&M culture, because they embrace technology, and it's a great thing to be a part of.
Very impressive. Devika, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing about yourself, about H&M. It's very impressive. Congratulations for your success so far, and to H&M. What an amazing organization. We hope to have you back on in a few months when we hear about your new projects and what you've achieved. I'm going to venture a guess there's going to be some artificial intelligence involved at some point.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm learning all I can about that right now. So more to
Incredible,
come on that.
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much for
You're
having
welcome.
me.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. That's all for today. Keep an eye out for our next workplace podcast.
Thank you, Alka.